The crystal champagne flutes were still clinking when his hand struck my face, right there in the ballroom, under the glare of camera flashes. "Take off that cheap red dress," he snarled, his CFO mask slipping in front of 200 guests. I simply held up the receipt, watching the color drain from his face, because the person who'd paid for this dress was the one person who could fire him on the spot. From that moment, this wasn't about the color of my dress anymore. It was about the color of dirty money. My name is Lily Hart, and at 33, I've learned that the most dangerous predators often share your dinner table. As the cyber compliance lead at Riverton Dynamics, I spend my days ensuring our industrial equipment company follows every regulation to the letter. Ironic, considering the man who shares my mother's bed breaks every unwritten rule of human decency. Harold Quinn, 58, CFO of Riverton and my stepfather for the past 7 years, rules our Northbridge home like a corporate dictator. He married my mother, Carol Hart Quinn, when she was still grieving my father's death. She chose surface peace over confrontation, a choice I've watched slowly hollow her out from the inside. "You represent this family," Harold would say, adjusting my collar before every company event, every charity dinner, every fucking grocery run. His fingers would linger too long, his grip too tight. "Your behavior reflects on my position." "I represent myself," I'd reply, stepping back. "And the law." That always made his jaw clench. Harold fashioned himself as Northbridge's moral pillar, the church elder who'd never missed a Sunday service, the philanthropist whose name graced every charity program, but I knew the man behind the three-piece suits and practiced smiles. At home, he controlled everything: our schedules, our wardrobes, even the volume of our voices. My mother existed in his shadow, her vibrance dimmed to match his preferred palette of beige and gray. She'd been an artist once, her studio filled with bold canvases that celebrated color and life. Now she painted still lifes of fruit bowls and empty vases, if she painted at all. The pre-IPO pressure at Riverton had Harold wound tighter than usual. He'd patrol the house at night, checking locks, reviewing my work clothes, ensuring nothing could threaten his carefully constructed image. The company's public offering would make him wealthier than he'd ever dreamed, and he wasn't about to let his disappointing stepdaughter ruin it. What he didn't know was that my position gave me access to every financial document that crossed our servers. During a routine compliance check last month, I'd noticed something odd: miscoded transactions from our internal employee welfare fund flowing into a community charity called Community Forge. Harold sat on its advisory board. I'd flagged it initially as a simple accounting error, but the more I dug, the more the numbers refused to add up. Purchase orders for security equipment that our facilities never received, vendor payments to companies that existed only on paper, all flowing through Harold's preferred charity. "Leave it alone," my friend Hannah Brooks, our HR director, had warned when I'd mentioned it over coffee. "You know how connected he is in this town." But I couldn't. Maybe it was years of watching him suffocate my mother's spirit. Maybe it was the way he'd look at me when he thought I wasn't watching, calculating what threat I might pose to his empire. Or maybe I was just tired of men like Harold thinking their titles made them untouchable. The IPO roadshow was set to begin in 3 weeks. The entire company buzzed with nervous energy, everyone eager to cash in their stock options. Harold practically lived at the office now, coming home only to bark orders and criticize my mother's cooking. "The Elkwood Charity Gala is this Saturday," he announced one evening, not looking up from his tablet. "Black tie. You'll both attend. Carol, wear the navy dress. Lily." He finally raised his eyes, studying me like a risk assessment. "Something appropriate, nothing that draws attention." "Of course," my mother murmured. I said nothing, but as I climbed the stairs to my room, I made a decision. I was done being appropriate, done being invisible. If Harold wanted to play the moral patriarch while stealing from employee welfare funds, he'd learn that some risks can't be managed away. In my room, I opened my laptop and began building a timeline. Every questionable transaction, every shell company, every charity dollar that took a detour through Harold's network. The Elkwood Gala would be the perfect stage for Riverton's leadership to see their CFO clearly. I just had to survive until Saturday. The Elkwood Regency Ballroom glittered like a jewel box, crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light across the crowd of Northbridge's elite. The pre-IPO fundraising gala had drawn everyone who mattered: board members, major investors, local politicians, and enough media to ensure every moment would be documented. I stepped through the entrance in my dress, a deep burgundy silk that hugged my body, before falling in elegant folds to the floor. The color was rich, sophisticated, unmistakably red, not attention-seeking, but impossible to ignore. The invitation had specified "Bont formal," and I'd taken it to heart. My mother walked beside me in her prescribed navy, her hand trembling slightly on my arm. Harold strode ahead, already working the room, his laugh booming across conversations about quarterly projections and market valuations. "You look beautiful," my mother whispered, but her eyes held fear. I squeezed her hand. "So do you." We'd barely made it past the coat check when Harold materialized, his face flushed with barely contained rage. He grabbed my elbow, steering me toward a corner near the service corridor, away from the main crowd, but still within sight of several guests. "What the hell do you think you're wearing?" His voice was low, dangerous. "A dress?" I replied calmly. "The invitation said bold formal. I told you to wear something appropriate." His grip tightened. "You look like a goddamn embarrassment. Like some cheap—" "Harold," I kept my voice steady, professional. "You're hurting me. People are watching." That's when he snapped. Maybe it was the IPO stress, or the 3 whiskeys he'd already downed, or simply that I dared to defy him in public. His hand released my elbow only to swing back and strike me across the face. The crack echoed off the marble walls. Time seemed to stop. A woman gasped. Champagne glasses paused mid-sip. 2 photographers who'd been capturing candid moments turned their cameras our way, the rapid-fire clicking of shutters filling the silence. "Take off that cheap red dress," Harold snarled, his CFO composure completely shattered. "You're a disgrace to this family." My cheek burned, but I stood straight, refusing to cower. Blood roared in my ears as I became aware of our audience. Servers frozen mid-stride, a security guard speaking rapidly into his radio, several board members staring in shock. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step back." The security guard, a young man named Marcus, who I recognized from the office building, positioned himself between us. Harold seemed to realize what he'd done. His face cycled through emotions, rage to confusion to a dawning horror as he noticed the cameras, the phones now recording, the whispers spreading through the ballroom like wildfire. "This is a family matter," he tried, attempting to recover his authority. "Not anymore," Marcus replied firmly. Hannah appeared at my side, followed by Omar Layton, our legal counsel. "Lily, are you all right?" I nodded, though my cheek throbbed. The crowd parted as more security arrived, and I caught sight of my mother near the bar, her navy dress making her almost invisible against the dark wood, her face pale as paper. "Ms. Hart?" A woman in an elegant black suit approached. "Janet Morrison, the event manager. Could you come with me, please? We should document this, and there's something else." She led me to a small office behind the ballroom, Hannah and Omar flanking me protectively. Once inside, Janet handed me an ice pack and an envelope. "This was left for you at the registration desk," she said. "Prepaid." Inside was a receipt from Bergdorf Goodman, dated 3 days ago, the burgundy silk dress, shoes, and clutch, all itemized, all paid for with a corporate American Express. The cardholder's name made my breath catch. Evelyn Sloan, chairwoman of Riverton's board of directors. A handwritten note was clipped to the receipt. "A woman in leadership should never apologize for standing out. Wear it well. E.S." "Holy shit," Hannah breathed, reading over my shoulder. Omar was already on his phone, likely alerting the rest of the legal team. Through the office window, I could see Harold in the ballroom, surrounded by board members. His animated gestures and red face suggested damage control wasn't going well. "The security footage?" I asked Janet. "Already preserved," she confirmed. "Multiple angles. The photographers also confirmed they captured the incident." I pressed the ice pack to my cheek, my mind racing. Evelyn Sloane hadn't just bought me a dress. She'd set a stage, and Harold had played his part perfectly. The question now was, how far was I willing to take this? Looking at the receipt again, I had my answer, all the way. The revelation about the dress hit Harold's world like a perfectly placed explosive charge. Within minutes, the ballroom dynamics had shifted completely. Where Harold once commanded attention, he now found himself isolated, board members giving him a wide berth as they huddled in urgent conversations. "Evelyn wants to see you," Hannah said, returning from the main floor. "She's in the executive suite upstairs." I found Evelyn Sloane exactly where I'd expect, standing by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Northbridge's skyline, a glass of champagne untouched in her hand. At 62, she commanded any room she entered, her silver hair swept into an elegant chignon, her bearing more regal than any executive I'd known. "Lily," she turned, studying my swollen cheek with sharp gray eyes. "Sit. We need to talk." I took the offered chair, still holding the ice pack to my face. 3 weeks ago," she began, "you submitted a compliance report flagging unusual transactions in the Employee Welfare Fund. Do you know where that report went?" "To Harold, as CFO," I replied. "Standard protocol." "And then to me, when he tried to bury it." She moved to sit across from me. "I've been watching Harold Quinn for some time now. His charity work, his political connections, his creative accounting. But I needed proof. Then you appeared. Meticulous, principled, and best of all, underestimated by him. The pieces clicked into place. The dress wasn't just a gift. I wanted to see how he'd react to you showing independence in public. Though I didn't expect him to implode quite so spectacularly, she gestured to my cheek. "I'm sorry for that. Violence wasn't part of my calculation." "Why not just fire him?" "Because firing isn't enough. Harold has been siphoning money meant for our employees' emergency fund into his political machinery. He's been using Riverton's reputation to launder bribes through charitable donations. And with the IPO weeks away, any scandal could cost our employees millions in stock value." She leaned forward. "Unless we handle this correctly, what do you need from me?" "Everything, every document, every trail you found. We're convening an emergency board meeting tomorrow night. Harold just gave us cause to investigate him thoroughly without it looking like a witch hunt. His assault on you, witnessed by half of Northbridge's elite, opens every door we need." I thought of my mother, still trapped in Harold's web. "He'll retaliate." "Not if we move fast. I've already spoken with Hannah about an emergency protective order. Omar will file it first thing tomorrow. Harold won't be allowed within 500 feet of you or Riverton's offices while under investigation." "And my mother?" Evelyn's expression softened. "I've arranged for a discreet financial advisor to meet with her Monday. Your father left her assets that Harold has been managing. We'll ensure she understands her options." Standing, she moved to her desk and retrieved a folder. "This is what our forensic accountants have found so far. Combined with your compliance work, it paints quite a picture." I opened it, scanning the preliminary findings. Shell companies layered like nesting dolls. Political contributions disguised as equipment purchases. A web of financial manipulation that made my discoveries look like scratches on the surface. "The media will want your story," Evelyn continued. "The young compliance officer who stood up to corruption literally took a hit for integrity. It's compelling narrative for our IPO. Riverton cleans house, promotes transparency, protects whistleblowers." "You want me to go public?" "I want you to consider it, but first, we need Harold completely removed. Tomorrow's board meeting will be decisive. Be prepared to present everything." A knock interrupted us. Omar entered, his expression grim. "Harold's lawyers are here. They're demanding to speak with Lily." "Absolutely not," Evelyn said coolly. She's represented by counsel. They can coordinate with our legal team. There's more, Omar added. 3 employees have come forward in the last hour. They say Harold pressured them to donate to Community Forge, implied their jobs depended on it. Evelyn and I exchanged glances. The dominoes were already falling. Document everything, she instructed Omar, and increase security for tomorrow's meeting. Harold's about to lose everything, and desperate men do desperate things. As I left the suite, receipt still clutched in my hand, I realized the red dress had been more than a fashion statement. It had been a declaration of war, funded by the one person Harold couldn't intimidate or control. Tomorrow, we'd see if that was enough to bring him down. Sunday morning came with a hangover of bruises and purpose, while Harold presumably scrambled to salvage his reputation. I sat at my dining table with 3 laptops, 2 external drives, and enough coffee to fuel a small startup. Aunt Ruth, my mother's sister and a retired forensic accountant, sat across from me, her reading glasses perched as she dissected spreadsheets with surgical precision. "This bastard's gotten sloppy," Ruth muttered, highlighting another suspicious entry. "Look here. Same invoice number used 3 times, different amounts each time, amateur hour." I'd called Ruth at dawn, and she'd driven 3 hours from Columbus without hesitation. She'd never liked Harold, had boycotted the wedding, and now finally had the chance to prove why. "The pattern is clear," I said, pulling up my compliance dashboard. "Every quarter, right before earnings calls, there's a spike in equipment purchases from 3 vendors. Those vendors all have registered addresses in the same office park, which Harold's brother-in-law owns," Ruth finished. "God, it's like they learned fraud from a YouTube tutorial." My secure phone buzzed. Hannah calling. "Lily, you need to know. Harold tried to access the office this morning. Security turned him away, but he was attempting to get to the server room." "He's trying to delete evidence," I said. "Already backed up," Hannah assured me. "Omar had a T create redundant copies of everything yesterday. We're also pulling his emails from the litigation hold. You're going to want to see what we found." She sent over a secured file. I opened it to find a treasure trove of Harold's correspondence with vendors, political campaigns, and most damningly, instructions to his assistant on how to code fraudulent transactions. One email thread made my blood run cold. Harold discussing with a vendor how to inflate invoices for security consulting, with the excess funneled to something called PR/Red Fund. The dates aligned with major political fundraisers in Ohio. "Jesus," Ruth breathed. "He's been running a political slush fund through the company. That's federal crime territory." My mother appeared in the doorway, still in her bathrobe, clutching tea with shaking hands. "He's been calling nonstop. Says if you don't drop this, he'll..." "He'll what?" Ruth stood, moving to her sister. "Carol, honey, he hit your daughter in public. He's stealing from his own company. What's he threatening you with?" "The house," my mother whispered. "He says it's in his name, that he'll throw us out, that I'll have nothing." I pulled up another file I'd been saving. "Mom, look at this. Dad's life insurance policy. The one that paid for the house originally. Harold had you sign papers to refinance 2 years ago, but look at the actual documents." Ruth leaned in, her accountant's eye catching it immediately. "The fucker put it in a trust, with himself as sole trustee. But, Carol, you're the beneficiary. He can't sell without your consent. And if he's removed as trustee for cause..." "Like criminal fraud?" I suggested. My mother sank into a chair. For the first time in years, I saw a spark of something in her eyes. Anger, maybe, or hope. "Show me everything," she said quietly. We spent the next 6 hours building an airtight case. Ruth created a forensic timeline that would make prosecutors weep with joy. I compiled every compliance violation, cross-referenced with Harold's emails. My mother, surprising us both, remembered conversations and dates that corroborated the paper trail. "He would brag," she said, highlighting another transaction. "After his golf games with Judge Morrison and Commissioner Blake, said he owned this town's future." The final piece came from an unexpected source. My phone rang. Marcus, the security guard from last night. Ms. Hart? I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I overheard Mr. Quinn on a call this morning when we turned him away. He was telling someone to clean the PR files and make sure the red entries are gone by Monday. Thought you should know. I thanked him and immediately texted Omar. Within an hour, we had a preservation order preventing anyone from deleting files from the Community Forge servers. As evening approached, I surveyed our war room, bankers' boxes of evidence, digital files backed up in triplicate, and a presentation that would leave no doubt about Harold's crimes. You know he'll try to destroy you, Ruth said quietly. Men like him don't go down easy. I touched my still swollen cheek. He already tried. Now it's my turn. My mother stood, straightening her spine in a way I hadn't seen in years. I want to be at tomorrow's meeting. Mom, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Her voice was steel. It's time I stopped choosing peace over justice. Your father would be ashamed of how long I've let this go on. Ruth hugged her sister. Now that's the Carol I remember. Tomorrow would bring the board meeting that would determine everything. But tonight, for the first time in 7 years. My mother smiled like she meant it, and that felt like a victory all its own. Monday morning arrived with a flurry of legal documents and strategic moves. The emergency protective order had been granted at 8 a.m. Harold was legally barred from Riverton's offices, our home, and any contact with me. By 9 a.m., I was in the office with Hannah and Omar, preparing for the evening's board meeting. Harold's attorney filed a motion to delay, Omar reported, scrolling through his tablet. Claims he needs time to prepare a defense against baseless accusations. Motion denied. Evelyn's voice came from the doorway. She entered with 2 external attorneys from Morrison and Associates, Ohio's premier white-collar crime firm. The board has a fiduciary duty to investigate immediately, given the pre-IPO timeline. She handed me a folder. The SEC was notified this morning through proper whistleblower channels. You're now protected under federal law. Any retaliation becomes a federal offense. The gravity of that protection wasn't lost on me. Harold had moved from corporate threat to potential federal defendant. Media's catching wind, Hannah added, showing us her phone. 3 reporters have called about Saturday's incident. Photos are circulating on social media. Let them circulate, Evelyn said coolly. By tomorrow, they'll have a much bigger story. I spent the morning with the external attorneys. Walking through every piece of evidence, they were particularly interested in the PR red entries. This coding system, the lead attorney, David Morrison, mused, it appears to reference political contributions, PR for public relations, red for Republican candidates, I finished, cross-referenced with FEC filings. Every red payment corresponds to donations just under reporting thresholds, spread across multiple PACs. Corporate funds illegally funneled to political campaigns. Morrison's associate was already taking notes. That brings DOJ into play. By noon, our war room had expanded. Forensic accountants from Morrison's firm had arrived, converting our evidence into a format that would be undeniable in both boardroom and courtroom. Every transaction was mapped, every email chain documented, every pattern exposed. The afternoon brought unexpected allies. 3 more employees came forward with stories of Harold's pressure tactics. The IT director revealed Harold had requested unusual access to financial servers. Even Harold's assistant, Patricia, arrived with boxes of documents. I've worked here 15 years, Patricia said, her voice steady despite obvious nerves. I've watched him destroy good people who asked questions. When I heard what he did to you, what you're doing now, I can't stay silent anymore. She'd brought originals of documents Harold thought he'd destroyed, handwritten notes about moving money, calendar entries for meetings with vendors that didn't exist, even recorded voicemails instructing her to handle the red stuff discreetly. At 4 p.m., Aunt Ruth arrived with my mother and another surprise. Thomas Chen, a highly regarded Cincinnati attorney specializing in asset recovery. Your aunt retained me this morning, he explained, shaking my hand. We've filed emergency motions to freeze any assets Harold might try to move, including the house trust. Your mother's interests are now legally protected. My mother looked different, stronger, wearing a crisp business suit instead of the muted colors Harold preferred. I've been remembering more, she said. Conversations, threats he made. Mr. Chen says I should document everything. She's been quite helpful, Chen confirmed. Spousal testimony about financial crimes can be very compelling. The final pre-meeting bombshell came at 5 p.m. Omar rushed in with his laptop. The preservation order worked. Harold's been trying to access Community Forge servers remotely all day. Each attempt is logged, showing consciousness of guilt. And? Evelyn prompted. It mirrored the servers before he could delete anything. We have everything, including a hidden partition with a second set of books showing the real flow of money. David Morrison actually smiled, a shark sensing blood. That's criminal intent. Documented in real time, beautiful. As 6 p.m. approached, we made final preparations. The presentation was loaded, evidence boxes arranged, and security briefed. The board meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m., but members were already arriving, their faces grave. Remember, Evelyn coached me. You're not just presenting evidence, you're showing the board that Riverton has employees brave enough to protect its integrity. That's the story we take to Wall Street. Hannah squeezed my shoulder. You've got this. We all do. Looking around the room, at the attorneys, accountants, my mother, Aunt Ruth, colleagues who'd risked their careers to support me, I realized this had become bigger than just my fight with Harold. It was about every employee whose emergency fund had been pilfered, every vendor forced into corruption, every person Harold had crushed beneath his polished shoes. One more thing, Omar said, checking his phone. Local news just picked up the story. CFO accused of assault at charity gala. They're requesting statements. After the meeting, Evelyn decided. By then, we'll have much more to tell them. The sun was setting over Northbridge as we prepared to enter the boardroom. Somewhere in the city, Harold was probably raging, pulling whatever strings he had left, but his time was up. The red dress had been the spark, but what came next would be the fire. And I was ready to watch it all burn. The Riverton boardroom at 9 p.m. looked like a war council. 12 board members sat around the polished mahogany table, their faces illuminated by the presentation screen. External auditors from Ernst & Young flanked one side, while Morrison's legal team occupied the other. Harold sat at the far end, his attorney beside him, looking like a cornered animal in his wrinkled suit. Evelyn called the meeting to order with crisp efficiency. We're here to address serious allegations of financial misconduct and assault by our CFO. Ms. Hart will present the compliance findings. I stood, remote in hand, my mother's presence in the observer section giving me strength. The first slide appeared. The security footage from Saturday night. Timestamp visible, showing Harold's hand connecting with my face. This assault occurred at 9:47 p.m. at the Elkwood Regency, I began, my voice steady. But it's merely the visible symptom of a deeper corruption. Harold's attorney objected immediately. This is a personal matter being conflated with... Sit down, counselor. Evelyn cut him off. Ms. Hart has the floor. Frame 2 appeared. Evelyn's receipt for my dress. Her confirmation email displayed below. The dress Mr. Quinn called cheap was purchased by our board chair. His violent reaction to my independence mirrors his reaction to financial oversight. I clicked forward. Frame 3. The flowchart Ruth and I had created, showing money moving from employee welfare funds through Community Forge to shell companies. Over 18 months, $2.3 million designated for employee emergency assistance was diverted through a charity Mr. Quinn controls. I highlighted each transaction. These funds were then funneled to vendors owned by his brother-in-law, who kicked back payments to political campaigns. Board members leaned forward as I showed the invoice duplications, the inflated purchase orders, the coded entries. Harold's face grew redder with each slide. Frame 4 made the room gasp. Harold's emails explicitly instructing subordinates to misallocate funds. Delete after reading, one said. Make sure the read entries balance before board review. Read another. This is taken out of context, Harold sputtered. Then let's add context. I clicked to the hidden partition data. This second set of books, discovered today on Community Forge servers, shows where the money really went. Entries marked PR Red correspond exactly to political contributions funneled through multiple PACs to circumvent campaign finance laws. David Morrison stood. If I may address the board, this constitutes wire fraud, money laundering, and campaign finance violations. The DOJ will certainly pursue criminal charges. You set me up, Harold snarled, rising from his chair. You and that, he pointed at Evelyn. This is entrapment. No, Evelyn replied calmly. This is accountability. Sit down. Harold. I continued through the evidence. Patricia's documents. The IT access logs showing Harold's desperate attempts to delete files. Testimonies from pressured employees. The presentation built like a symphony, each movement adding to the inevitable crescendo. The total misappropriated funds exceed $3.7 million, I concluded. This doesn't include potential tax fraud or the reputational damage to Riverton weeks before our IPO. The external auditor from Ernst & Young spoke up. We'll need to restate 2 years of financials. The IPO timeline is now in serious jeopardy unless immediate action is taken. Motion to remove Harold Quinn as CFO, effective immediately, Evelyn announced. Seconded, 3 board members said simultaneously. All in favor? 12 hands rose without hesitation. Motion carries unanimously. Harold Quinn, you are terminated for cause, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Harold stood, his face purple with rage. You'll regret this, all of you. I know things about this company, about all of you. Actually, Omar interjected, your employment agreement includes comprehensive non-disclosure and non-disparagement clauses. Violating them forfeits your severance and triggers immediate legal action. 2 security guards entered. Harold looked around wildly, perhaps finally understanding that his kingdom had crumbled in less than an hour. This isn't over, he hissed at me as security approached. Yes, I replied quietly. It is. As Harold was escorted out, Evelyn addressed the room. I motioned to appoint Lily Hart as interim director of financial compliance, with a mandate to clean up this mess and prepare us for a delayed but transparent IPO. The vote was unanimous. But we weren't done. Evelyn nodded to someone by the door. 2 uniformed police officers entered, followed by a detective. We're looking for Harold Quinn, the detective announced. We have a warrant for his arrest on charges of assault and financial fraud. Through the glass walls, we could see Harold being handcuffed in the hallway. News photographers already gathering in the lobby below. Someone had leaked the story perfectly. Evelyn turned to address the room one final time. Riverton stands for integrity. Tonight, we proved that no one, regardless of title or connections, is above that principle. The media will have questions. Our answer is simple. Corruption was discovered and immediately addressed. That's the story we take to Wall Street. As the board members filed out, my mother approached. Your father would be so proud, she whispered, embracing me. Looking out at the North Bridge skyline, still wearing the red dress that had started it all, I realized Harold had been wrong. The dress hadn't made me an embarrassment. It had made me unforgettable. The next 30 minutes unfolded like a precision strike. Through the boardroom's glass walls, we watched Harold's complete unraveling, handcuffed, read his rights, and marched past the gathering crowd of employees who'd stayed late to witness history. The prosecutor's office wants to meet tonight, David Morrison announced, checking his phone. They're fast-tracking this given the federal implications. Evelyn stood at the window, watching the police cars below. How quickly can we freeze the Community Forge accounts? Already done, Omar replied. Judge Harrison signed the order an hour ago. Every account Harold touched is locked down. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, the security guard. News vans pulling up, Channel 6, 12, and CNN affiliate. The boardroom doors opened, and Thomas Brooks, my mother's attorney, entered with a triumphant expression. "We've just secured an emergency hearing for tomorrow morning. The house trust will be transferred to your mother's sole control by noon." My mother gripped my hand, tears flowing freely. For 7 years, that house had been her prison. Tomorrow, it would be hers again. "There's more." Patricia, Harold's former assistant, stepped forward carrying a banker's box. Mr. Quinn kept a private safe in his office. Security opened it after his termination. She set the box on the table. "You need to see this." Inside were ledgers, handwritten records that predated our digital systems. Names, dates, amounts, but what made everyone freeze were the photographs. Harold, with state senators, judges, police commissioners, each photo labeled with dates and dollar amounts on the back. "Jesus Christ," Morrison breathed. He was documenting his own bribes. This is a corruption network spanning half of Ohio. Evelyn immediately took charge. "Omar, get these to the FBI tonight. Patricia, you're under company protection as of now. We'll arrange security and legal counsel." The room became a hive of activity. Phones rang constantly as board members coordinated with legal teams, PR firms, and law enforcement. Through it all, I noticed my mother watching Harold's arrest play out on someone's tablet, her expression unreadable. "Mom?" I touched her shoulder. "I wasted 7 years being afraid of him," she said quietly. "Afraid he'd take the house, ruin your career, destroy us socially. But look how quickly he fell once someone stood up to him." Hannah appeared with her phone extended. "Lily, the Wall Street Journal wants a statement. They're running the story front page tomorrow. Riverton CFO arrested in assault and fraud scandal. Whistleblower employee praised." Before I could respond, the boardroom doors burst open. A young analyst rushed in, laptop in hand. "You need to see this. Harold's trying to transfer money from an account we missed." We crowded around the screen. Real-time banking data showed Harold, or someone with his credentials, attempting to move $500,000 from a personal investment account to an offshore bank. "Can we stop it?" Evelyn demanded. "Already blocked," the analyst grinned. "But here's the interesting part. He's doing it from his phone, which means he's violating the protective order by accessing company-linked systems," Omar finished. "That's additional charges." Morrison was already on the phone with the prosecutor. I could hear him explaining the new evidence, the attempted flight risk, the need for immediate action. The media crowd outside had grown. Through the windows, we could see reporters setting up for live broadcasts, the Riverton building becoming the backdrop for breaking news. "Ms. Hart," Evelyn approached me. "In 10 minutes, I'm going to walk out there and give a brief statement. I'd like you beside me. The visual is important. Leadership standing with integrity." I nodded, then froze as my phone rang. Harold's number appeared on the screen. "Don't answer," Omar warned, but Morrison held up a hand. "Actually, put it on speaker. We're recording." I accepted the call. Harold's voice filled the room, slurred and desperate. "You stupid little bitch. You think you've won? I'll destroy you. I'll tell everyone about your father's debts, your mother's pills, every secret." "Harold," I interrupted calmly, "you're on speaker with legal counsel and law enforcement liaison. You've just violated your protective order and made terroristic threats." Silence. Then the line went dead. Morrison smiled grimly. "That's felony witness intimidation. His bail just got a lot higher." Evelyn checked her watch. "It's time." We walked through the building, employees lining the hallways, some applauding, others simply watching in awe. In the lobby, Evelyn paused, straightening my shoulders. "Ready?" I thought of Harold in handcuffs, of my mother reclaiming her life, of $3.7 million that would be returned to employees who needed it. "Absolutely." The glass doors opened to an explosion of camera flashes and shouted questions. Evelyn stepped to the makeshift podium, her voice carrying clear and strong. "Tonight, Riverton Dynamics proved that no one is above accountability. Thanks to the courage of our compliance team, particularly Ms. Lily Hart, We've exposed and eliminated a cancer of corruption." She turned to me, and I saw approval in her eyes, not just for catching Harold, but for doing it the right way. Riverton's commitment is clear: transparent governance, ethical leadership, and zero tolerance for those who betray our stakeholders' trust. Our IPO may be delayed, but our integrity is intact, and that, she looked directly into the cameras, is worth more than any timeline. Behind us, through the glass, I could see the red and blue lights of additional police cars arriving. Harold's empire hadn't just fallen, it was being systematically dismantled, piece by corrupt piece. And I was still wearing my red dress. The autumn air was crisp as I stepped out of the Riverton building with Hannah and Aunt Ruth flanking me. The media circus had finally dispersed, leaving only the quiet hum of the city at midnight. My red dress caught the streetlight as we walked to the parking garage, the silk rustling with each step. "Hell of a night," Ruth said, lighting a cigarette with shaking hands. "I've seen corporate fraud before, but this? Harold built himself a whole criminal enterprise." Hannah checked her phone for the 100th time. "FBI's already raided 3 locations. The Community Forge office is swarming with agents. This is going to ripple through the entire state." My own phone buzzed. A message from the SEC confirming receipt of our whistleblower complaint. Case number assigned. Another text from David Morrison. "Prosecutor says Harold's bail hearing is set for tomorrow. Given the flight risk and witness intimidation, he's likely spending tonight in county." We reached my car, where my mother stood waiting. Her navy dress replaced with jeans and one of my father's old college sweatshirts she'd hidden from Harold for years. "Ready to go home?" I asked. "Our home," she corrected, smiling. "For the first time in 7 years. Actually ours." As Ruth drove us through Northbridge's quiet streets, I watched the city pass by. The same buildings, same roads. But everything felt different. Harold's network of influence, so suffocating just days ago, was already crumbling. 3 city councilmen had recused themselves from votes pending investigation. Judge Morrison had announced his early retirement. The police commissioner was taking a leave of absence. We pulled into our driveway just as my phone rang. Evelyn's name appeared on the screen. "I wanted you to know," she said without preamble. "The board just finished an emergency session. Your interim appointment includes a substantial raise and full whistleblower protections. But more importantly, we're establishing the HEART Initiative, a fund specifically for employee protection and compliance enforcement. I think your father would appreciate the legacy." I couldn't speak for a moment, watching my mother unlock our front door, no longer looking over her shoulder, no longer flinching at shadows. "Thank you," I managed. "No, Lily, thank you. You saved this company. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we rebuild." Inside, Ruth was already pouring wine while my mother moved through the house, opening windows, letting October air chase away the stale fear that had permeated these walls. To the woman in red who brought down a giant, Ruth raised her glass. "To standing up instead of standing aside," my mother added, her voice stronger than I'd heard in years. We clinked glasses, and I felt the weight of the past week settling into my bones. Harold was in jail. The FBI had everything they needed. Millions of dollars would be returned to the employees who earned them. My mother was free. My phone lit up with notifications, messages from colleagues, interview requests, even a few job offers from rival firms, but I set it aside. Those were tomorrow's decisions. Tonight, I sat in my father's old chair, still wearing the burgundy dress that had started it all, watching my mother paint for the first time in years. Bold strokes of color across canvas, reds and golds and deep purples, nothing beige in sight. "What are you painting?" Ruth asked. "Freedom," my mother replied simply. "It looks different than I remembered." Through the window, I could see the lights of downtown Northbridge, where Harold's office now sat dark and empty, his nameplate already removed. By morning, forensic accountants would be combing through every file, every secret he thought buried. The dress had done its job. It had made me impossible to ignore, impossible to silence. But more than that, it had been armor, red silk courage when I needed it most. I closed my eyes, hearing my father's voice from so many years ago. Stand up for what's right, Lily, especially when, it's hard. I did it, Dad, I whispered to the darkness. I finally did it. Tomorrow would bring depositions, investigations, and the long work of rebuilding Riverton's reputation. There would be trials, testimony, and the methodical untangling of years of corruption. But tonight, in a house finally free of Harold's shadow, 3 women sat together, unafraid. My mother painted. Ruth told stories of corporate scandals past, and I remained in my red dress, a reminder that sometimes the boldest choice is simply refusing to disappear. The war was won, the red dress had served its purpose, and Harold Quinn would never hurt anyone again. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to hear where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment and let me know what city or country you're in so we can connect. If you enjoyed this tale of justice served in burgundy silk, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts below. What would you have done in Lily's shoes? Let's discuss in the comments.